The forgotten outpost. The morning alarm hadn't worked in 3 months, but Marcus Chen's internal clock woke him at 05:30 anyway. 43 years on Zarian 9 had carved routines into his bones deeper than any canyon on this dust-blown world. Beside him, Elena stirred. Her breathing labored even in sleep. The atmospheric processors in their habitat dome were failing again, running at maybe 60% efficiency on a good day. Marcus swung his legs out of bed, joints protesting with sharp reminders of his 78 years. Through the scratched plexi window, Zarian 9's twin suns were just beginning their climb over the rust-colored mountains. Another day in paradise, as Elena liked to say with that dry humor that had kept them both sane through the decades. Their habitat sat at the edge of what had once been Mining Station Delta 7, a sprawling complex that had housed nearly 3,000 souls during the rhodium rush of '89. Now only 17 people remained in the entire settlement, scattered across failing domes like survivors on a life raft. The mining consortium had pulled out 15 years ago, when the easily accessible deposits ran dry, leaving behind anyone too poor, too sick, or too stubborn to evacuate. Marcus and Elena were all three. He made his way to the kitchen unit, starting the morning ritual of coaxing their water reclaimer to life. The machine wheezed and gurgled before finally producing a thin stream of brownish liquid that would have to pass for coffee. Real coffee was a memory from another lifetime, from before they'd spent their life savings raising 3 Altarian orphans who'd needed specialized atmospheric chambers and exotic proteins to survive their developmental years. Elena shuffled in, her walker clicking against the metal floor. The neural damage from the mining accident 20 years ago had never fully healed. Too expensive to fix properly, the company medic had said, right before the company disappeared entirely. Signal came in during the night, she said, nodding toward the communication panel. Her voice carried that particular wheeze that meant the oxygen mix wasn't right again. Probably just stellar interference, but the pattern looked artificial. Marcus frowned. They hadn't received a real transmission in months, just automated beacons from passing cargo ships that never stopped. He pulled up the log, studying the wavelength analysis. The signal was coming from somewhere planetside, from the direction of the old North Point mines that had been sealed for 30 years. Could be equipment failure, Marcus said, but something about the mathematical precision of the pulses made him doubt it. Maybe something got knocked loose in yesterday's storm. Elena was already at their ancient scanning station, fingers moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd once been the settlement's chief communications officer. It's not random. Look at this. She pulled up a frequency analysis. Prime, number sequences, then mathematical constants. Pi, Euler's number, the golden ratio. Someone or something is trying to establish intelligent communication. They looked at each other, the same thought passing between them. In 43 years, on Zarian 9, they'd never encountered anything that suggested the planet had hosted intelligent life. The surveys had been thorough. The planet certified as barren before human colonization began. We should report it, Elena said, though they both knew the response. The colonial authority would file it away, maybe send an automated probe in 6 months if they remembered. Nobody cared about anomalies on dead-end worlds. Marcus was already pulling on his environment suit. I'll take the rover. Check it out. Could be worth something if it's salvageable tech. You shouldn't go alone. Elena's concern was evident, but they both knew she couldn't make the journey. The neural damage made EVA work impossible for her now. I'll be careful, he promised, sealing his helmet. Monitor the channels. If I'm not back in 4 hours, send out a general distress call. The rover was another relic, held together by wire, determination, and Marcus's engineering knowledge from his military days. It started on the 3rd try, which was better than usual. He drove out through the southern gate, the settlement shrinking behind him until it was just another speck against the endless red desert. The North Point mines were carved into a mountain face that rose like a broken tooth from the plains. The HFY consortium had sealed them after a collapse killed 12 workers, declaring the entire area unstable. But the signal was definitely coming from inside, growing stronger as Marcus approached. He parked the rover at what had been the main entrance. now buried under tons of deliberately placed boulders. But there, off to the side, was something he'd never noticed before. A secondary entrance, smaller, older, cut into the rock with a precision that didn't match human mining techniques. The passage was narrow, forcing Marcus to duck as he entered. His suit lights pierced the darkness, revealing walls that were too smooth, too regular. This wasn't blasted rock, it was carved, melted, shaped by something that understood stone at a molecular level. The signal was overwhelming now. His suits, receivers crackling with mathematical beauty. And then he saw it. The chamber opened before him like a cathedral, its ceiling lost in darkness. But it wasn't the size that stopped his breath. It was the sphere floating in the center, 20 feet across, its surface covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. It pulsed with a light that shouldn't exist, colors that human eyes weren't meant to process. Marcus approached slowly, his boots echoing in the vast space. The sphere responded to his presence, the symbols shifting, rearranging themselves. And then impossibly words appeared in English, burning themselves across the artifact's surface. Genetic match confirmed. Inheritor identified. Welcome, child of Earth. His hands trembled as he reached for his communicator. Elena, you need to hear this. I've found something. Something big. Marcus, what is it? Your suit readings are going crazy. It knows we're human, he said, staring at the sphere as new. Symbols emerged. Star charts and technical diagrams flowing like living text. Elena, it was waiting for us. For humans specifically. Back in the habitat, Elena's scanners lit up with incoming data, transmissions from the artifact that contained terabytes of information. Technical specifications, historical records, maps showing the location of 12 other similar artifacts scattered across the galaxy. And at the center of it all, a message that kept repeating in 100 human languages. The inheritors have been found. The legacy awaits. Marcus stood, in that ancient chamber, his aged body forgotten in the face of such impossibility. They'd spent their lives on this forgotten world, abandoned by their children, ignored by civilization, scraping by on the margins of human space. But now, it seemed, the universe had other plans for Marcus and Elena Chen. The sphere pulsed brighter, and new text appeared. Time remaining until full activation. 72 hours. Other inheritors will be summoned. Elena, Marcus said softly, I think our quiet retirement just ended. Through the communicator, he heard her sharp intake of breath. Marcus, I'm receiving signals. 3 ships just changed course toward Zarian 9. They'll be here within 72 hours. Who are they? There was a long pause before Elena answered. According to their registration codes, it's Kaiden, Lyra, and Thomas. Our children are coming home. The unexpected return. Marcus hadn't slept in 36 hours, but exhaustion was a luxury he couldn't afford. The artifact's data streams had consumed every working display in their habitat, turning their modest home into something resembling a military command center. Elena worked beside him, her fingers flying over keyboards despite the tremor in her left hand, cataloging the flood of information with the methodical precision that had made her the best communications officer in the outer colonies. The first ship arrived at dawn on the second day, its sleek hull a stark contrast to the rusty cargo haulers that occasionally visited Zarian 9. Marcus watched through the viewport as it descended, its landing thrusters kicking up clouds of red dust that hadn't been disturbed in years. The ship bore corporate markings, Stellar Dynamics Corporation, one of the megacorps that essentially owned 3 star systems. Kaiden emerged first, and Marcus felt his chest tighten at the sight of his eldest adopted son. The Altarian had grown into his full height, nearly 7 feet tall, his blue-scaled skin now adorned with expensive biomodifications that made him shimmer like a living sapphire. The breathing apparatus that had once been essential for his survival had been replaced with genetic modifications that must have cost a fortune. Behind him came 2 assistants, both human, carrying equipment that looked fresh from a military laboratory. Kaiden himself wore a suit that probably cost more than Marcus and Elena's habitat, its fabric shifting and adapting to the environment with each step. "Hello, Father," Kaiden said when they met at the airlock. His voice, translated, through the neural implant that converted Altarian harmonics to human speech, carried no warmth. Mother? Elena remained seated, her walker positioned beside her chair. 22 years, Caden. Not a single message after you left for university. I've been busy, Caden replied, his scales shifting to a darker hue, what Marcus recognized as defensive posturing. Building a career takes dedication. So does raising 3 alien children on a mining world, Marcus said quietly. Before Caden could respond, another ship appeared on the horizon. This one was even more impressive, a private yacht with the logo of the Galactic Research Institute. Lyra had always been the smartest of the 3, her Altarian intellect enhanced by human educational methods that Marcus had taught her at their kitchen table with outdated textbooks and sheer determination. She descended from her ship like visiting royalty, her scales artificially enhanced with gold tracings that marked her as a member of the Altarian scientific elite. The little girl who had once cried in Elena's arms during painful molting seasons was gone, replaced by someone who looked at her adoptive parents like they were specimens to be studied. Mother, father. She acknowledged them with a slight nod. I heard about the discovery. The entire scientific community is buzzing about it. How did you hear about it? Elena asked. We haven't reported anything to the authorities yet. Lyra's scales rippled, the equivalent of a human smirk. I have sources. When an artifact of potentially pre-human origin activates on a backwater planet, certain people take notice. The 3rd ship arrived an hour later, military in design with weapon systems that were definitely not civilian grade. Tomas had joined the Altarian Defense Force, something that shouldn't have been possible for someone raised by humans. But Tomas had always been ambitious, willing to do whatever it took to distance himself from his unusual upbringing. He wore his uniform-like armor, every medal and commendation displayed prominently. When he looked at Marcus and Elena, there was something cold in his eyes, something that made Marcus remember the scared little hatchling they'd found abandoned at a space station, left to die because he was too small, too weak by Altarian standards. Let's dispense with the pleasantries, Thomas said, not bothering with greetings. We know about the artifact. We know it's responding to human genetic markers, and we know it's worth more than entire star systems. Marcus and Elena exchanged glances. They'd raised these 3 from infancy, taught them human values alongside respect for their Altarian heritage. But somewhere along the way, something had been lost. The artifact isn't for sale, Marcus said firmly. Caden laughed. The sound translated as harsh and dismissive. Everything is for sale, father. You just need the right price. Or the right pressure, Tomas added, his hand resting casually on his sidearm. Elena stood slowly, using her walker for support but maintaining dignity that made her seem taller than her frail form suggested. Is that a threat, Thomas? Are you threatening the people who saved your life, who spent everything they had to keep you alive when your own species abandoned you? For a moment, Thomas's scales flickered with what might have been shame, but it passed quickly. I'm simply stating facts. This discovery is too important to leave in the hands of... He paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound as insulting as what he was thinking. Humans? Marcus supplied. Poor humans? Elderly? Forgotten humans? On a dead-end world? You don't understand the implications, Lyra interjected, pulling out a holographic display. The artifact's technology could revolutionize space travel, energy production, possibly even genetic modification. In the right hands, your hands, you mean, Elena said. Qualified hands, Lyra corrected. I have 3 doctorates, published, papers in xenoarchaeology, connections with every major research institution in the galaxy. Marcus walked to the window, looking out at the red desert where he'd spent the better part of his life. Do you remember, he said quietly, when you were 7, Lyra? You had that respiratory infection that almost killed you. The medical supplies we needed cost more than we made in 3 months. Elena sold her grandmother's wedding ring, the last thing she had from Earth, to pay for your medicine. Lyra's scales shifted uncomfortably, but she said nothing. And you, Caden, Marcus continued, when the other human children bullied you for being different, for needing special atmospheric mix in your classroom bubble, I fought the school board for 3 years to get them to accommodate you. Lost my job at the processing plant because I missed too many shifts attending hearings. Ancient history, Caden muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. And Thomas. Marcus turned to face his youngest adopted son. You were so small when we found you. The doctors said you wouldn't survive a week. Elena stayed up every night for 2 months, feeding you by hand every hour, monitoring your temperature, singing human lullabies that somehow calmed your neural patterns. The room fell silent except for the hum of the habitat's struggling life support systems. That was your choice, Thomas finally said. We didn't ask you to do any of that. No, Elena agreed. You didn't. Because children don't ask. They simply need and parents provide. That's what love is. Love doesn't pay for genetic modifications, Caden said harshly. Love doesn't open doors in Altarian society. Love doesn't erase the stigma of being raised by humans. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Marcus saw Elena wince, saw years of sacrifice dismissed in a single sentence. You're right, Marcus said quietly. Love doesn't do any of those things, but apparently, neither does abandoning the people who loved you, because here you are 22 years later, not for love, not for family, but for profit. The artifact, Lyra began. The artifact has been here for thousands of years, Marcus interrupted. It waited for humanity to find it. Not Altarians, not any of the dozen species that colonized this world before us. It waited for humans. For us. He pulled out his data pad, showing them the message that had been repeating for 2 days. It calls us inheritors. It has a purpose, a design that goes beyond monetary value. Pretty words, Thomas said. But the colonial authority won't see it that way. Neither will the corporations already sending representatives. You're out of your depth, old man. Marcus smiled sadly. Perhaps, but at least we know what depth we're in. You three are drowning in something far worse than poverty or isolation. You're drowning in greed, in shame, in the desperate need to be something you're not. We are Altarian, Caden said firmly. By blood, yes, Elena said. But you were raised, with human values, human stories, human dreams. You can't erase 20 years of that, no matter how hard you try. The artifact chose that moment to pulse, sending a wave of energy that made every electronic device in the habitat flicker. New data streamed across the displays, and Marcus saw his children lean forward involuntarily, their scientific curiosity overcoming their carefully maintained distance. It's showing star charts, Lyra breathed. Locations of other artifacts, but also something else. Meeting points? Gathering places? It's counting down to something, Marcus said. Full activation in 36 hours. And when that happens, every inheritor, every human, within a dozen light years will know about it. The 3 Altarians exchanged glances, scales shifting through patterns of calculation and concern. Then we need to secure it now, Thomas said, reaching for his communicator. No, Marcus said firmly. We need to understand it, to respect what it's trying to tell us. You're naive, Caden said. This is how humans always lose. Too much sentiment, not enough strategy. Elena laughed, surprising everyone. Is that what they teach you? That humanity's weakness is our sentiment? She shook her head. We survived nuclear war, climate collapse, the loss of our homeworld. We spread across the galaxy not through superior technology or ruthless strategy, but through our ability to adapt, to hope, to find family in the strangest places. We found family in you three, despite everything. The room fell silent again, and Marcus could see the conflict in his children's scales, the patterns shifting between their trained Altarian composure and something deeper, something that remembered, being held, being loved, being human in all but blood.